Desolate was so excited about law school. She arrived there safely, so also other law school students. The gates of the law school creaked open to a flood of students, each dragging suitcases, backpacks, and hopes for a successful law career. The campus was alive with chatter, laughter, and the occasional shout of excitement or panic from those struggling with directions. Jimmy Calm strode through the crowd confidently, his leather satchel bouncing against his hip. He scanned the courtyard with sharp eyes, already calculating how to navigate the inevitable campus chaos. Beside him, Zainab adjusted her glasses, carefully balancing her stack of files and textbooks, muttering to herself about the importance of staying organized from day one. Larry, true to form, tripped over a suitcase on the pathway, sending his papers flying into the air. Huh. Not my day, Seth, he shouted, laughing as a few fellow students helped him gather his scattered notes. Behind him, Blessing and Mona sashayed into the campus, their vibrant outfits catching the attention of many, their laughter mingling with the general commotion. In the hostels, students scrambled to claim their rooms. Lucky quietly carried his modest backpack, finding a corner for himself, while EB bounded up the stairs, calling greetings to anyone who would answer. Dora, clipboard in hand, was already checking names, making mental notes of who she might want on her debate team. By evening, the rooms had settled into a semblance of order. Beds were made, bags unpacked, and students were exchanging phone numbers and forming tentative friendships. Yet, excitement hung in the air like electricity. Tomorrow would bring the first real challenge, registration. Adnaik and her roommates, Olalard, Abukun, and Blessing set out for registration on the 2nd of law school. They, like other students, left the hostel early, every dressed in black and white, the dressing code for law school. The campus seemed even busier. Students lined up at the registration hall, their eyes wide with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Some were nervously rehearsing names and student numbers, while others were busy trying to charm the administrative staff. Olyumide, Daniel Elenai, Lucky, Raymond, Choice, Ifialua, Shema, Simazola, Sheena, Ademi, Larry, Emeka, Zainab, Adana, and a host of others stood patiently in line, reviewing his checklist. No mistakes today, he muttered, tapping his pen against the clipboard. Zainab was nearby, double-checking her documents, glancing at him with a competitive spark in her eyes. All students are dressed in law school's regulation wear, black and white. Larry, of course, had left half his documents in his room. He sprinted back and forth, dodging other students and drawing laughter from onlookers. Blessing and Mona, ever the social butterflies, flitted from one group to another, making friends and swapping gossip even as they lined up for their turn. EB, with his usual energy, made sure to greet everyone he knew, shaking hands and joking, while Lucky quietly observed the hustle, waiting for the perfect moment to step forward without drawing unnecessary attention. Dora, serious as ever, was already strategizing how to get through the registration quickly so she could focus on preparing for the moot court competitions. By mid-afternoon, the registration process began to slow. Students filed past the counters, receiving ID cards, timetables, and official documents. The excitement of the first day gave way to a quiet satisfaction. They were officially law students now, and the real journey had only just begun. The main auditorium of the Nigerian law school was filled to the brim. Rows upon rows of students sat stiffly, dressed in black and white, files resting on their laps like shields. The air was heavy thick with fear, hope and uncertainty. Some students whispered quietly to each other. Others stared straight ahead, afraid to look around. A few clutched their notebooks tightly, as though holding on could somehow protect them. The large doors at the back of the hall suddenly opened, The murmuring stopped instantly. A middle-aged man walked in with calm authority. His steps were slow, deliberate. This was Mr. Adigbite, a man whose face carried no smile, no softness. He walked straight to the podium and scanned the hall, letting his eyes settle on every student. "Good morning," he said. The response came back weak and uneven. "Good morning, sir." Mr. Adigbite adjusted the microphone and paused. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and tense. "Welcome to the Nigerian Law School," he began. A few students relaxed slightly. Some even allowed themselves a small smile. Then his tone changed. "Let me make something very clear from today." He looked around the hall again. "Not all of you sitting here will be called to bar." The hall went completely silent. No cough. No movement. Even breathing felt loud. A pen slipped from someone's hand and hit the floor. The sound echoed. Faces tightened, hearts raced. "This is not a motivational speech," Mr. Adigbite continued. "This is a warning." He leaned forward. "Some of you will fail. Some of you will repeat this program. And some of you will be sent home." Fear crept into the room. "You will be tested mentally, physically, and emotionally," he said. "Excuses will not save you here." Sweat trickled down faces. Eyes dropped to the floor. Then suddenly he pointed. "You," he said. All heads turned. Yusuf sat upright, calm, his face steady. "What is the primary duty of a legal practitioner?" Mr. Adigbite asked. The room held its breath. Yusuf stood up slowly. "To uphold the rule of law," he said, his voice firm. "To act in the best interest of the client, and to maintain the dignity of the legal profession." A pause followed. Mr. Adigbite nodded once. "Sit." Yusuf sat down. Around him, other students felt smaller. The journey had begun. When Barrister Femi walked in, he did not rush. He stood for a moment, scanning the hall, letting the silence settle. Then he spoke. "I believe all of you here can be called to the bar." The words were soothing and comforting. They were all attentive and encouraged. Barrister Femi paused. "But some may not be called to bar. Not because they are not intelligent," he continued. "Not because T are not capable. And certainly not because they do not deserve to be here." He stepped forward slightly. "Let me ask you a question," he said. "How many of you wrote the bar part? One examination more than once?" A few hands rose hesitantly. "And how many of you were told at some point that law was too hard for you?" More hands went up this time. Some students exchanged glances, surprised they were not alone. Barrister Femi nodded. "Yet here you are," he said quietly. "So tell me, did you get here by accident?" The hall remained silent, but something shifted. "You are seated in this room because you earned it," he continued. "Law school does not break people. It reveals them. It reveals discipline. It reveals character. It reveals who is willing to grow." He looked around again. "Now tell me, who among you is willing to work, even when it is uncomfortable?" Almost instinctively, hands began to rise. More than expected. A faint smile crossed his face. "Good," he said. "Because that is all this place demands." The lecturer beside him posed a question to the class. "Who can answer this?" Before fear could return, Yusuf stood up. His voice was calm. His answer was clear, confident, and precise. A few heads turned toward him. Some students felt smaller in that moment. Others felt something else entirely, a spark. Barrister Femi nodded approvingly. "Did Yusuf always know this?" he asked. "Or did he learn it?" No one answered, but the message was clear. "Do not measure yourself against the person sitting next to you," Barrister Femi continued. "Measure yourself against yesterday's effort. Ask questions. Make mistakes. Learn loudly." He paused once more. "Let me ask you this. Who here wants to succeed? Every hand rose. Then remember this, he said firmly. The same strength that brought you here will carry you through. Law school is demanding, yes, but it is not impossible. As the session ended, nothing around them had changed. The books were still heavy. The expectations were still high. But inside the students, something had shifted. Fear was still present, but it no longer stood alone. Hope had found its seat. Everyone entered with hope, but nobody entered with peace. The weight of legacy and ambition pressed down on us from the first step. Tund carried the expectations of his entire village on his shoulders. Zainab, the first in her family to get this far, feared every shadow. Emeka hid his anxieties behind a wall of jokes, and BC shielded her own doubts with a flawless mask of calm. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and relentless pressure. The lecture halls became arenas, the library a sanctuary and a prison. We saw the masks begin to crack. Emeka's laughter faded. Zainab's hands trembled. Tun's seriousness deepened into exhaustion. Bissie's calm was tested. It was in that shared struggle, in the quiet moments of desperation, that something shifted. We stopped being competitors and started being survivors. A shared cup of coffee, a whispered word of encouragement, a simple nod of understanding. We had entered as 4 individuals, each chasing a solitary dream. That the fire of this place forged us into something new, something stronger. We would leave not just as lawyers, but as a unit, bound by the scars and the triumphs of this crucible.